Hello everyone, I am Left, and today I want to talk to you guys about situational items for supports and not so situational items for supports. Today I'm just going to be talking to you about support items in general and what they are, when you should build them, when you should not build them, and some of the more esoteric, so to say, support items out there that a lot of people don't think to buy in their ranked matches. So, without further ado, let's talk about all of the items that a support can, should, and maybe will buy in a ranked match. First, and always built first, is the Fountain of Renewal. The Fountain of Renewal is basically the staple support item for Vainglory since it came out. Well, since Vainglory came out, Fountain of Renewal, there's really not much to say about it. It gives you a passive heal per second when you're not in combat, and when you activate it, it heals your allies up a bunch depending on how low they are. So this is basically always the first buy unless you are Rex from Gangstars who likes to buy Stormcrown first when he's playing Lyra. So yeah, Fountain of Renewal, not much to say about it. It's an all-purpose item. Try not to use it when your team is getting mortal wounded, but yeah, that's really all I have to say about Fountain. Crucible is the second item I want to talk about today, and it's actually a little bit more situational and interesting than Fountain. So Crucible gives the holder plus 600 health, and it, on activation, grants a reflex block to each ally in the radius. So if your whole team is standing together, the Crucible is 3 reflex blocks at the same time. Crucible is very useful against teams that have like multi-crowd control abilities, like Adagio's Verse of Judgment, Catherine's Blast Tremor, Finn's Forced Accord and Quibble, and even Arden's Gauntlet to a degree. So Crucible should really be picked up when you're playing against those specific heroes. If there's an ability on the other team that has the ability to stun 2 or 3 of your teammates at the same time, Crucible is worth picking up. Even if you're playing against a good Lance who keeps rooting your team and keeps smashing 2 or more people against a wall with Githian Wall, then Crucible would be worth picking up. But say you're playing against maybe a Fortress or a Flicker, and there's no Adagio in the lane, you probably can go without Crucible. So Crucible, a little bit more situational than the Fountain, but it's always a nice pickup, just doesn't necessarily need to be straight after the Fountain. Next, let's talk about War Treads. War Treads are the used-to-be Warhorn item. If you guys aren't that old of a Vainglory player, you probably don't remember the Warhorn. War Treads and Stormcrown used to be one item. It was called the Warhorn. You didn't even build it out of boots, so the support never really finished his boots back then. He would just usually have travel boots and then the Warhorn. The Warhorn would give you damage to objectives, and on activation it does the exact same thing that War Treads do. So they decided to condense that. Well, actually, they decided to split apart into War Treads and Stormcrown, but oh well. So War Treads are pretty necessary on support. You're going to want to be buying this usually right after the Fountain, unless you're going against a team that has multiple CC abilities like Forced Accord, Blast Tremor, and Verse of Judgment. Then you're going to want to pick up the Crucible. But War Treads is a pretty high priority pickup for a support. I'm pretty sure it gives you 500 health, and on activation, it gives your whole team a movement speed boost for longer time depending on how many allies. So War Treads, obviously very useful. I like to use it to disengage when Fortress uses his ult from the enemy team. Different things like that. You can use it to chase down enemy heroes, all sorts of things like that. You used to be able to use it to boost the Kraken, but you can't really do that anymore. Also, fun fact, did you know that Adagio used to be able to heal the Kraken? That was always fun. But yeah, that's War Treads. They are definitely a priority pickup. Not very situational, but you're always going to want to have War Treads. Let's talk about Atlas Pauldron next. Now, Atlas Pauldron is a item that is very controversial in the community. Lots of professional players feel that you shouldn't be able to just click a button and then decimate a opponent's attack speed, especially if they're playing a weapon carry like Ringo or Vox. But, okay, so think. Are you going against a breaking point hero? Any hero that likes to build breaking point. Think Ringo, think Vox, think Weapon Power Kestrel, think literally anyone that would build breaking point. Do you want Atlas Pauldron? Yes, you want Atlas Pauldron. Atlas Pauldron slows your enemy's attack speed for a period of time. It did just get nerfed in the last patch, which is a sigh of relief for carries like Vox and Ringo and Baron. I remember Playoff Beard saying that under the old Atlas Pauldron, if you Atlas Pauldron to Baron, he would auto-attack once every 3 seconds. And that was a little bit too much, so that would be why they nerfed Atlas Pauldron. Atlas Pauldron gives you a little bit more armor than the Coat of Plates, but on activation, it pulses out around you and lowers the attack speed of anybody caught in it. This can be reflex blocked, but that is usually a skill that is relegated to the top tier. So yeah, Atlas Pauldron, you don't want to be picking this up unless you are going against a attack speed weapon power carry who's usually building Breaking Point. So pretty situational, but really not all that uncommon to build. Now let's talk about Storm Crown. Storm Crown is it's an item. I hate the Storm Crown personally. I liked it back when you had to commit to building a Warhorn to get that damage to objectives. But Storm Crown is the literal, it's actually just the, well, do you have an open item slot and you're a crystal powered jungle carry? Build Storm Crown, it can't hurt anything. Despite multiple nerfs, we still get Storm Crown Aftershock junglers like Taka and Grumpjaw, and it sucks. I hate that meta so much. But sadly, it's what we have to play in, and yeah, so Storm Crown is supposed to be for support heroes to be doing more damage to objectives, but it sadly ends up as a crystal-powered jungler item that just is annoying to play against because it gives you so many bonus stats. Even after multiple nerfs, you still see it on Taka and Grumpjaw, and it annoys me. But anyways, Storm Crown, if you've got an open item slot and you don't need to pick up any more support items, you've already got that Fountain, Atlas Pauldron, War Treads, Crucible, you've already got all that stuff and you really don't know what to build next, you don't need a contraption, and yeah, just pick up the Storm Crown. It's pretty good, it's useful for taking the Kraken as a support, and I feel like with enough health, Arden could probably solo the Kraken just using a Storm Crown. So yeah, Storm Crown, pretty situational on a support. You don't really want to be picking that up unless you already have a lot of other support items built, but it's still good nonetheless. So let's go on to the next item. Contraption is a little bit of a weird item. I remember back when I had first started playing Vainglory, Contraption didn't exist. They actually added it in a couple months after I started playing, and everyone was like, what is this thing? It actually gave you the same sort of damage to objectives as Storm Crown, except it was splash damage to objectives in a small radius, which was really odd, and no one really used it at first, and then somebody figured out that the damage to objectives in a radius stacked, and so you would get games where people were building Breaking Point and then like 3 contraptions on Catherine, because back then the contraption didn't just give you cooldown speed, it also gave the holder bonus max health, and then that damage to objectives in a radius. So you would have huge, like imagine like quadruple the damage that Storm Crown has now. You would have that in an area, and then you would have about 900 max health from holding all those contraptions, and about 90% cooldown speed stacked. And you would be Catherine holding old Breaking Point as a last item. And if you don't know anything about the old Breaking Point before the nerfs, old Breaking Point, you did not need to have any weapon power. It was just the longer you were basic attacking something, the more weapon power you gained. Doesn't matter how much weapon power you had to start. So it was kind of, it was freaky. So that's why they nerfed Contraption a bunch, and now it is relegated to you only buy this if you're going against Crystal Kestrel, Taka, or Flicker, or maybe even all 3. So Contraption, very useful for putting vision down and just basically shooting flares everywhere. You're gonna want to be picking this up either second or third if and only if you're going against Taka, Flicker, or CP Kestrel, or I mean if it's only Taka you don't really need to, but if you're going against... So now let's talk about Null Wave Gauntlet, probably the least used support item, but on the day it came out it was the most used support item. Null Wave Gauntlet was very controversial in the professional community due to the length for which it silenced your items. Basically, not having a reflex block in a fight in the pro community late game means you're going to be Atlas Pauldroned more than twice. You're not going to be able to block a single stun or root because the pros are not going to miss those skills, and you're basically just going to wind up dead. So there was a huge outcry against Null Wave Gauntlet when it first came out because it was dominating the ranked ladder. Whoever built their Null Wave Gauntlet first won, because these teams in the pro leagues, they don't miss their combos. So No Wave Gauntlet now has been nerfed a little bit, its base stats have been tuned a little bit, and it has an actual activation animation so that you can actually block now. So No Wave Gauntlet, if you don't know what it does, it silences the target's items for a period of time, and it's very useful. You can put it onto the enemy roamer so he can't use Fountain or Crucible and things like that. So it's like a miniature Catherine ult that doesn't silence your skills, but it also only hits one person. Really, the only situation where you want to be buying No Wave Gauntlet is if the enemy roamer is like very, very good at activating his items at the correct time, or if you're doing the sort of combo that like you want to lock the enemies down and then use a big ultimate like Verse of Judgment. You've seen that before, like say you got Catherine and Adagio. Catherine uses Blast Tremor into a Verse of Judgment and you stun everybody. That's a pretty cool combo that I've seen a lot in the pro leagues. But anyways, No Wave Gauntlet, very situational. You don't really want to be picking this thing up too often because you could usually just do better with a Crucible or War Treads or Contraption or Stormcrown or Atlas Pauldron or Fountain or literally anything. Not a lot of people are building No Wave Gauntlet very often, but hey, if you've got that extra slot and for some reason you don't like the Stormcrown, maybe like I do, pick up the No Wave Gauntlet. It's pretty useful and it basically cripples a support's ability to support. So let's go on to the next item. Next I want to talk about Shiver Steel. You really probably haven't seen this item in forever, but Shiver Steel used to be a huge part of the meta. Back when Cruel was actually good, Shiver Steel was amazing. So, Shiver Steel, if you don't know what it does, because you've probably never even seen it in your ranked matches unless you're an older player like myself, it is a activatable which, when you activate it, for the next 5 or so seconds, I think, your basic attacks will slow the target hero by... it slows them more if you're melee than if you're ranged, but each basic attack will slow the enemies when you have activated your Shiver Steel. It also gives the holder plus 500 or 400 health, I believe. Anyways, I don't know the specifics of the stats, but that's what Shiver Steel does, and you've probably never seen it, so let me tell you how it's useful. Say you're playing Arden, and you're trying to protect your Celeste, but the enemy team is running Taka Blackfeather, and they just keep murdering your Celeste. So your Celeste manages to kill the Taka, but the Blackfeather is still coming after her. You activate your Shiver Steel, and every attack you put on the Blackfeather makes it harder and harder for him to actually reach your Celeste. He's going slower, it's easier for Celeste to hit him, it's harder for him to get to her, and Celeste is able to kill him. So that's what Shiver Steel does. You really actually do want to be picking up Shiver Steel sometimes, especially when you're protecting an immobile carry against a mobile threat like Blackfeather, Taka, or Koshka. It's very easy to keep assassins off of your carries when you're using Shiver Steel, but if you're not facing any sticky assassins that are trying to get to your carries, Shiver Steel's probably not the best pick. So only one more item now. I just want to say before the end, I'm not going to talk about Slumbering Husk because I really don't feel like it is a support item in the slightest. So let's go into the last item here that I believe that roams should situationally pick up. That last item is Aftershock. Now, you might be saying, like, well, why would you ever put a carry item on a support? Aftershock is one of those items that is actually pretty okay on a lot of support heroes. Well, I say a lot of support heroes, but I really only mean Catherine and Fortress. Aftershock synergizes incredibly well with two of these heroes' abilities, Merciless Pursuit and Law of the Claw. Fortress's Law of the Claw deals crystal damage and crystal damage on the bleed, and it synergizes with Aftershock because the basic attack after you claw them with Law of the Claw is an Aftershock proc, which puts even more bleed onto the enemy that you hit. And then with Merciless Pursuit, your next basic attack is changed into a stun. Well, with an Aftershock on, your next basic attack is changed into a stun that is also an Aftershock proc. So you can see why those two skills would be especially empowered with Aftershock. Also, it empowers Arden's Blood for Blood Punch, but you really don't want to be picking up Aftershock on Arden so much, because he benefits more from more health items with his perk and other things like Vanguard and things like that. So yeah, that's going to be the last item in this video. I hope you all enjoyed and learned a lot of useful things about the support items. Ask me questions in the comments if you need to know any more, if you have specific questions or specific situations that you want to know about, or just general things to say. Remember, I promise to do a face reveal at 5,000, so keep hitting that subscribe button if you want to see my ugly face. So that's going to be it for this video, guys. I'll see you all later.